Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. Thursday Thoughts? What on earth are they, I hear you ask? Well, my friend Lucy and I meet every week over on Instagram to talk all things personal growth because she is as obsessed with it as I am. And we decided that we might as well put those conversations out as a weekly podcast. So now you can listen to us chat here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll be talking about topics such as spirituality, limiting beliefs, the ego, imposter syndrome, gratitude, meditation, confidence, and so much more. So if you're ready, here we go. Good morning.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Oh, how are you, love? Happy
Yeah,
birthday.
good. I know. 51 today.
Oh, how do you feel?
Well, just the same as normal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't quite believe it's 51 years, 51 birthdays. It's mad.
And
I
this
don't
year has gone so far. I mean, I remember when you turned 50 and it has gone like
I
that.
know.
It's insane.
Yeah, time goes so fast and it definitely
Oh,
speeds
God.
up. Seems to speed up as the older that you get. And you
100%.
hear that, don't you, all
Yeah.
the time? Which I
So
said
true.
Which I suppose leads really nicely into what we're going to talk about today,
Yeah.
which is about being intentional, living intentionally.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, shall I go?
Go for it, love. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is quite a good topic, and then particularly when you realise that life is just passing you by so fast. Because if we live intentionally, I think it can help slow everything down and help you really savor and enjoy the moments because it's so easy, isn't it, just to go on autopilot, to go through the motions of life. And I think that the more we go in those onto autopilot, the more time just seems to speed up because you're just going through the motions and everything, one day, 1 minute, every moment blurs into the next. So it's really more important than ever, really, just to be intentional about what you're doing, really live according to your values, what lights you up, all those good things which we talk about. But unless we're actually really focusing and having an awareness that we are living and aligning to our values, to those things which lights up, then actually, you know, life just whizzes by. We go into autopilot and we don't really savor and appreciate those moments. So I think, we can just start by saying I try to do this, but it's so easy as when you've got so much going on and so many different things going on to just kind of get caught up and kind of constantly feel like you're chasing your tail. But the more that we can actually set ourselves goals and intentions for each year, each quarter, each month, each day, then the more likely we are to actually live intentionally according to what we actually really want rather than just letting life happen to us. Rather, it's really about letting you decide how you want your life to go.
I mean, exactly. I mean, you've really said it all in a couple of minutes, but it's so true. When we're not living with intention, we are just being sort of pulled along by the tide of life without really thinking about it. And like you just said, life is happening to us. We're just like sort of in the wind, being kind of blown around in whichever direction without having any control over that. So it's kind of the way that I see it is it's kind of about taking back control over your life as much as we can. Obviously, there are very, very few things we can actually control. Basically, we can control what we do, how we think, how we act. But it is so true that if you're not intentional about your life, then life is just going to happen to you, and you're just not gonna feel like you're in control of it, and you're going to feel like you say, like every day just goes one into the next, into the next, into the, and we're kind of, it's that feeling of sort of just kind of floating through life rather than actually being decisive and being intentional. And I think it really comes, I mean, it actually, comes down to really simply making a plan of how you want to spend your time. And I mean, I've talked before about my A4 rose gold diary, which I'm obsessed with, which actually I need to get a new one because it's about to run out. Um, but it really is as sort of basic and simple as, for example, writing down what you are going to do that day. And if you have a 9 to 5 office job, then you can still make a plan for your time when you're not there. You can write morning routine at 6:30 a.m. and then you can write, gym at 7 p.m. or whatever it is. But it's just it I think it's about kind of planning without planning every single inch of your life. But if you're not sitting down and working out how you are going to show up every day and what you're planning to achieve every day, then you are just going to drift through life. And I think so many of us just drift through life. Napoleon Hill, I don't know whether anyone who's listening or watching has read any of Napoleon Hill's books. I'm obsessed with Napoleon Hill. I think he's amazing. He wrote the classic Think and Grow Rich, but he also wrote a book called Outwitting the Devil, which is one of my favorite books ever. It's amazing. And he talks about how human beings just drift through life without intention. So yeah, it's really just make it. And you mentioned goals. It's so important to have goals, and they don't have to be huge massive goals like writing a book or changing career. They can just be little goals, but whatever you can do day to day that makes you feel like you are choosing how you spend your time. I think that's what's so important. It's us deciding how we are going to spend our days and our weeks and our months and our years and subsequently our lives you know
Yeah. Yeah. And as you say, it's, flexibility is important. We don't have to necessarily be so rigid that we have to stick to it. But if you don't have some goal, then you're not likely to do it. I know for myself that that is why a morning routine is, and we do bang on about morning routines. We love our morning routines, but
yeah,
that is why it is such a brilliant, brilliant way to start the day. Because firstly, if you set the intention that you're going to get up at a certain time and you're going to do the things you set out in your morning routine, whether that is meditation, breath work, exercise, whatever that is, it's such a great way to firstly start that day by achieving what you set out to achieve. It's so much easier to do it in the morning.
yeah,
If I don't do it in the morning, it tends not to happen in my day because things get away with you, things chop and change, and then it's sort of always those sorts of things are the things which just kind of get left off the list. So by being intentional and doing them in the morning leaves you after you've done them feeling amazing because you've already achieved so much, but also the practices that you tend to do in the morning, in that space time before you start your work, helps you focus in and be intentional about what the rest of the day is going to be. So for example, this morning in my inner space breathwork session, which we do every morning at 7:30, we set an intention for every session we do. And this morning was all about, well, our theme this month is all about gratitude. And the intention this morning was to be really appreciative of yourself, of our, uniqueness and all the things that we bring. And we then look ahead to the day, to the week, and just have that intention of like, how can I bring more focus and awareness to the amazing person that I am? It's very, very simple. It's nothing big, but it just starts your day and your week by going, oh my gosh, yes, I am brilliant. And how can I bring more of that and appreciate more of that because we're so rubbish at kind of thinking, oh, we're not good enough and all of that sort of thing. So it's just these little things. And okay, you might forget about it after you've done it, but if there's a little grain of it which remains within you,
mm,
it just is such, it helps you live your life in a more, well, just in a more enjoyable way,
yeah,
a more appreciative way. And so that's why morning routines, I think, are just such a brilliant way of being intentional, as well as also starting your day or the night before, because the day actually often starts by what you do the night before, writing down some of the things you want to get done. And I have had to really learn, and I'm still learning this, that actually you need to break those tasks down into very small steps rather than just say, I'm going to record a podcast episode, for example, actually write down all the different steps. It's
Mm.
like you've got to find the guest, you've got to do the research, you've got to do the emails, to all the parts of it. Because then actually you achieve all of those things. I think sometimes if what we set our goal to be, if it's too big and too broad, it doesn't really help us be intentional, because it's like, oh gosh, that's so many different parts of that you kind of can procrastinate more easily and not get it done.
A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you.
Totally. Also, I think it's worth thinking about being intentional about how you want to feel during the day.
Yes.
Because it's amazing how, if you, and this again, talking about morning routines, like this is another reason why they're so amazing, because when you take that time first thing in the morning just to get centered and just give you, like, rather than rushing out of bed, rushing into the shower, doing whatever you've got to do, rushing out the door to work, when you just take a little bit of time to calm yourself and center yourself and just think about how you actually want to show up that day. I'm not saying that means for the next 24 hours you are going to be, say you want to show up, in a joyous way or a generous way, whatever it is. I'm not saying you're going to be that for the next 24 hours, but actually, if you, for example, set an intention in the morning to show up, with grace and with calm, then you might find that as you're standing in that queue in the coffee shop line and there's a really long queue and you're in a hurry, you might find that because you set that intention, you're actually able to be like, I'm not gonna get impatient. I'm gonna just, I'm just gonna stand here and breathe. There's nothing I can do about this. This is totally fine. When you set that intention somewhere in the back of your mind, it stays with you for the day, and it can just pop into your mind in those moments where you might otherwise react or behave in a way that you kind of wish you hadn't.
Yeah.
So I really think that it is worth setting that intention for how you want to be. And for me, it's definitely about, I tend to be quite feisty, shall we say. So for me, it's always, or often, I am going to not allow myself to be reactive, and I'm going to really focus on responding instead of reacting. And I think this, I'm sure it's not just me, I hope it's not just me, we all have a tendency to be reactive in certain situations, but when you are mindful of not wanting to be like that, and when you are mindful of wanting to respond to things instead of react, then you're simply more likely to respond to things instead of react. Just by putting that thought and setting that intention first thing in the morning, you're more likely to show up in the way that you want to. So I think it's really important to also think about, how do I want to feel? And one thing that's, I think, is a really good idea, going back to the sort of, planning, not every single second of your day, but just a rough plan of what you're going to, what you want to achieve in the day. And like you said, writing down those steps towards a goal, whatever it may be. I think it's quite a good idea to, on a Sunday, look at your diary. I'll do this. I'll look at what I've got coming up in the week, so I know. And I literally have, as I say, this A4 planner where I sort of mark things. I don't mark out every 30 minutes of every day, but I do block out time and write in what I'm planning on doing in that time. And I think, sometime on a Sunday is a really good chance to do that, really good opportunity to just sit down, look at the week, and just, even if you just put a couple of things in, even by just putting in morning routine at 6:30 or gym at 1 or whatever it is, I think that really helps to have a sort of overview of your week on a Sunday, just looking ahead to the week, rather than thinking, on a Monday morning, just waking up and going, oh my God, oh shit, what have I got going on this week? And feeling that sort of panic. If you just take a little, it only has to take 5 or 10 minutes on a Sunday afternoon or a Sunday evening. If you just take that time to look ahead at the week and just be a bit intentional about about your plans for the week and what you want to do that week. You know, what do you want to get done? What steps are you going to take towards your goal for the month or for the year? What little things are you going to do? And just put a little something in your diary or a little reminder in your phone. I use phone reminders for everything all the time, because that way it literally pops up on your phone and simply reminds you. So again, it's just, you know, what we're talking about here really is it's just having that. It's just being mindful that you are being decisive about how you're living your life, and it's just being mindful that you get to choose how you feel, how you act, and what you do, rather than, you know, going back to what we were saying at the very beginning, rather than just being on the back foot, sort of being in that kind of victim mode where life is just tossing you, you know, roundabout, and you don't really know what's going on. You're completely out of control. By being intentional, it just, you feel like you are sort of bringing back some of the control into your own hands, you know.
And also that really helps you maintain your energy, because if you are just sort of floating around, not quite sure what to put your attention on, you're wasting so much of your precious energy. Whereas actually, if you know where you're directing your energy, then you're going to just feel more energized, you're going to have more focus, more clarity. And yeah, ultimately, you're not going to get that sort of decision fatigue, which you can get. Otherwise, it's like, oh my gosh, what am I doing now? What do I do first? What do I do next? If you have a plan, some sort of plan, or you have some intention of what you're doing, actually, it's just so freeing. You don't have to go, oh gosh, I don't know where I'm going. You don't have that confusion and that, you know, scattered thoughts. It just feels more clearer, more focused, more everything just feels a little bit more smooth running, which is a really lovely feeling. And that can just really help with your mental health, I think, because I know that when I don't do it, and I'm very much guilty of sometimes, you know, some weeks going, I don't really know what I'm doing.
Same.
That's when I get, almost, I get stuck because I don't know what to do first. And I feel really foggy. Nothing feels clear. But actually, if I've done the work, the prep work, and it doesn't, as you say, it really doesn't take very long. 10 minutes is all you need. It really just keeps you on track. It gives you a North Star of where to focus your energy. And I must admit, I'm guilty of not doing it enough. I'm saying all of these things. But when I do it, it's amazing. I've tried lots of different ways of organizing myself. For me, what works actually is I use Google Calendar. And I color code things in Google Calendar. I like it because you can have different colors, and I block off, it's even a half-hour slots in Google Calendar. And I like that because I then get automatic reminders of what's coming up. And that's been really transformational. And even I'll put in things like, so I will put in things like my morning routine when I'm going to exercise. I'll put in things when I need to even do some sort of thinking or planning or researching, which are things which actually are or reflecting. I think a big part of this is reflecting on how things have gone and how they can be improved, which again, that's the part lots of us miss out. It makes me think, it was really when I was teaching, we would always it was like a big part of the learning process. You would make the kids, if they'd done a piece of writing, if they'd done anything, go back, reflect. What have I done well? What could I do better? All those sorts of things. They used to hate it because it was a bit like, we've done the work now. Why do I need to go back and have a look at it? And I think we're the same as adults. It's like, oh, I've done it now. I don't want to have to think about it again. But actually, going back and reflecting on what you have done and how you could have done it and what you could have done better is such a powerful learning process, so that next time you can sort of feed whatever you've learned into the next thing. And again, being intentional about that, I think, is such an important process, and something which, I kind of encourage myself to try and do more and more and more, because again, it just helps with that awareness of the way that you're living your lives. How could I have been more intentional about the thing that I did? How could that have helped me? I think it's something which we can all ask ourselves a bit more, how can I live a bit more intentionally? what can I do, after you've done something, could I have done that better? Or how could I, what have I learned from that? What can feed into that next step? Because I think ultimately it just helps us, just have more energy ultimately.
Yeah. I have to say, I am so shit at reflecting. I never do it. I'd never fucking do it. I'm absolutely rubbish at that. And I know that it's something that like when I've done something, I'm that person who never sits down and goes, exactly, what you just said. I never sit down and go, how did it go? What could I have done better? I just don't do it. And it's terrible because I know that I should. But it's one of those things that I find really, really difficult to actually do that. And in this, like you were saying about your kids at school, I feel the same way as they did. Like, oh
Yes.
God, it's such a pain in the ass. It's like when people talk about round about this time of year, it's like, have a look back and reflect back on how this year's gone. And I know that it's important, but I find it really painful. I find it like sitting down and doing schoolwork, which is just like, was never my thing. But one thing I just wanted to add to this conversation is that actually, when you think about it, what we're talking about here is actually incredibly simple. It's incredibly simple. All we're saying is that, or I think all I'm saying anyway, is that when you just cultivate that awareness, our very favorite word on the planet, or certainly mine, when you just cultivate that awareness of how you are living your life, how you are spending your days, how you are showing up, when you just cultivate that awareness, then that in itself is just being more intentional. So much of what you and I talk about is to do with awareness. Without awareness, we can't do any of this stuff. We have to. That's always, it always boils down to that. It always is the most important thing, because unless we are aware of how we are thinking, really, so much of this, all of this personal growth stuff comes back to, where are my thoughts? What is going on in my head? It ultimately comes back to that. It's what are you thinking about? Where are you placing your attention? And when you're living with intention, you are far more consciously aware of where you are choosing to place your focus. You're thinking about, okay, right, what is my plan for the day? Da, 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 da. Whereas when you're not being intentional, when you are not aware, that is when you are just sort of flailing about. And, as Napoleon Hill would say, that is when you are just drifting through life. So, but again, the whole concept that we're talking about here really is incredibly simple. It's very, it's just means that we are just being more intentional about how we think, how we feel, and what we do. It's really as simple as that, but it makes so much difference when you are consciously being intentional, when you're even aware that you're being that way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that is why we are so obsessed with our practices, which we do in the morning, which if anyone's saying, how can I improve my awareness? How can I build this awareness? Which, as you say, this is what it's all about. That is why having something in the morning to help you build that. So I have my breathwork sessions at 7:30, and this isn't just a plug for these, but it's just a natural, this is why we do what we do, which is that in those sessions, it's all about building that awareness and intention. You started this morning your morning routines, cock-a-doodle-doo, which is exactly the same as well. It's about being intentional, having a practice, building that awareness. And this is why we're doing these things, because we know how important they are, because they work. It works. I have built an awareness practice, as have you, over the years, and it does help you. Like I always try and explain it to people in the way that you did earlier. Is like when you have challenging things in the day, which we all have, and things which will trigger you, things which will really piss you off, things which will make you want to shout and scream. When you have more intention, when you have a good awareness practice, what happens is that time between the thing which happens, the trigger, and your reaction, that moment lengthens. It's almost like you have this sort of moment where you have a decision you can make in that moment. It's like, okay, this thing has happened. I can either shout, scream, get pissed off, say something I may regret, or actually I can breathe, I can take a breath. And when you've got this awareness, you are able then to make that choice.
Yeah.
How do I actually want to respond in this moment? Is it going to help if I shout and scream and say something I regret? Or actually, is it better just to say something a little bit less reactive, maybe walk away, whatever it might be? But that's what these practices do. It literally builds that time, it extends that time you've got between the trigger and the reaction. And that is such a powerful thing. That's what gives you that feeling of control. You can't control the challenges that what happens in life. Things happen, but what you can do is control that reaction. And it is, you know, this is so, it really has changed my life being able to do that. You know, if you've got kids and they're pissing you off, teenagers, oh my gosh, you know, this has helped me so much, because so many times I want to rant and rave. And sometimes I do. I'm not saying I'm perfect all the time. Sometimes I do. But I feel like I can keep my shit together a lot better because of this. So, I hope that makes sense.
It makes complete sense, and I couldn't, as you know, I couldn't agree more. It's so true. And I think for both of us, certainly speaking for myself, having incorporated these practices into my life over the last sort of 4 years, I have noticed such a big change in myself. And again, that isn't, like you just said, that is not to say that I am so far from perfect that it's not even funny. But I have noticed that things that used to make me flip my fucking lid and really fly off the hand, like I could always be that kind of person who would fly off the handle quite easily. Still can, if I'm completely honest, but I'm much better than I used to be. And I know that is down to being intentional. It's definitely down to my morning routine, 100%, because that's, as you and I talk about all the time, that is what sets you up for the day. And when you start your day off right, you are giving yourself a much higher chance of being more intentional throughout the day, rather than just starting off in a rush, as I used to. Rolling out of bed, having snoozed the alarm 17 times, just like, oh God, in a complete stress. That's the value of taking that time in the mornings to just really sort your head out and just center yourself, because the cumulative effect of doing that on a regular basis makes a fucking massive difference. And going back to the way that I can see that I've kind of changed in that respect, is those things that I would have flown off the handle about. I'll give you an example. Like you mentioned, I started my new morning routine club this morning, cock-a-doodle-oo, and last night the freaking Wi-Fi was being really dodgy, and I was just like, are you actually shitting me? Like, is this a joke? Like, what is happening? Why does this always happen? And I mean, literally, I had a Wi-Fi guy around about 2-3 weeks ago, because I've been having real problems with the internet. Anyway, there was a time when I would have just lost my shit, just like, oh my God, but I've what this enables you to do, like you were saying, that it's that gap between reacting or that gap between, am I going to react or am I going to take a second and respond? What I have found is that I am so much better at just saying to myself, Lucy, there is nothing you can do about this. What is the point of freaking out? And it's back to control. Like, when you are really, really painfully aware all the time of what you actually have control over, it's so freeing, because it just makes you much more able to just let things go. Like, if the Wi-Fi is not working on a Sunday evening, what the hell am I going to do? Not a lot. So either I can just like burst into tears and, scream and shout and sort of stamp my feet on the ground like a fucking toddler, or I can just go, okay, well, what, there's nothing I can do right now. The situation is exactly the same. It's all about our response to it. And, going back to awareness, this is why awareness of where our thoughts is just the fundamental thing that you and I are always talking about in these sessions. This is what it all boils down to. It's all down to awareness and being intentional. you know, is the same. That's also about being aware, because without awareness, you can't be intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there.
Yeah. God, we both having a good old rant this morning. I love it. But this is because we've just. I mean, I think the reason we're so passionate about all of this is because we know how much it really, really
Yeah.
works, and it's so clear when someone isn't living with intention, and you just and sometimes I just want to kind of just say, actually, just take a moment, slow down, and think, you know, you don't need to get it, you know, it's a waste of your energy
Yeah.
by, yeah. So just everyone who's been listening or watching this morning, just taking a little moment just to go, you know, how can I be a little bit more
Yeah.
intentional about the things that I'm doing today? That's all you need to do, and just bring a little bit of awareness to it. And come and
also,
join one of our morning sessions, either cock-a-doodle-loo at 6 a.m. with Lucy or 7:30 with me in the inner space.
One other thing that I just want to add, and I completely forgotten what it was. Oh my God, it's just gone completely flying out of my brain. I can't remember what the hell it was. But I know what I did want to ask before we finish is, what are you doing for your birthday, if anything?
Well, not much today, actually. We celebrated on Saturday night. We had some friends over, and then we went out dancing in Brighton, which was really good fun. So yeah, saw lots of friends at the weekend, had a lovely time. And today nothing really very much. I've got hopefully just dinner with the family this evening, and so quiet day. But yeah, working at home. So
well, a very, very
good.
happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And we'll be back this time next week. We decided, didn't we, what we were doing this week as well? We actually decided, which is a miracle.
Possibility. Something about possibility.
Yeah.
It was. All right, my darling. Okay, well, have a lovely day. Take care.
Happy birthday.
All right. Okay. Bye. Bye.